Okay, everyone relaxed. I invite you to have a conversation. These things can be quite formal, but don't be formal. Have the conversation as much as you can. I want to start off by asking this. We now have heard this afternoon about total design, hybrid design, paradisciplinary, live graphy. I mean, it feels like we have to add to the vocabulary actually in terms of what we're doing, and this is really from the practice side, right? The academics haven't even really. This is not even from the academic side. But here's my question: with all of this in mind, our challenge here is, what do we advise those who are in design in what they should do? If you are hiring any graduate, what are the values or capabilities you appreciate or value the most? Anyone who wants to start?
I don't hire designers.
Well, you're going to be hiring them soon enough.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe someone from a commercial background could start that first, and I'll respond.
Yeah, I give you two cases. I've been with this company for 4 years, so I've hired, instead of a secretary, I've hired a management associate, which is a young graduate. Okay, and happens to be. I would value the abilities like the creative thinking, ability to adapt. When the person when she actually receives the problems, she will deep dive and research. So the research ability is actually quite crucial. Okay, and the skill sets allow her to have a degree of specialty, but able to work across with different peers. So numeracy, language skills, because that's communications, and my work. What I show you is there's a lot of stakeholder engagement. So ability to communicate and work across with teams, colleagues across disciplines is absolutely crucial. Okay, so communication skills, numeracy skills, because data required analysis. So the ability to dig out the things and run some analysis and able to present it in a decent way. And being young, I think ability to use the tools available to support that analysis and presentation is also very important. And then it happens that I also help the group to transform the design team. And I've given the design group to 4 key appraisal parameters, because my prep time with them is in the tight business economy, like how we operate now, and a lot of budget has been cut or reserved or trimmed down, okay? And marketing budget particularly has been reduced quite a lot. But we cannot reduce on the creative thinking, okay? So foresight, design excellence, effectiveness, and productivity are 4 things that I actually challenge my team. And every one of us, including myself, could be living on borrowed times, okay? Our job could be cut or slashed tomorrow. But to justify, our value contribution to the group, we must be able to advise our brands when we are able to have a request. Can you do better on this? Could be a package design, could be a future audio, could be a blah, 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 could be something different. I need the first diamond, the double diamond, the first part, particularly the ability to discover, to see the broader context, the parameters, and I need to loop in quite a lot, before we start the act of design. Okay, so I would say creative thinking is also very important as well.
Right, just echo to my total design. Of course, the 4 features, probably you remember. The first one is actually technical excellence. Must be very good in your domain expertise, number 1. Number 2 is have a broader context, not just about your own discipline, trying to understand more, across different disciplines. And from the 5 angles, as I mentioned, social, technological, economic, environmental, and political issue. you all have an interest in it, which is very important, so that you can have a broader context of all the work that you have been doing. And then also, of course, is curiosity, because when anyone joins us, they want to kind of challenge the assumptions and trying to push the boundary, take on the challenge. And that's very important, because especially those young, young colleagues joining us, they need to have a curiosity. Lastly, of course, is collaboration. Communication, collaboration is very important, because we are not living on our own. We need to work on projects with hundreds of different colleagues from different disciplines. Communication and collaboration definitely is a must, I think, with current environment. So that 4 areas that I mentioned that support our total design.
There's one thing I always, try to see from a new hire. If I ask answer, if I ask a question, yes, no question, if the person answers yes or no, then pass. Some people don't understand that simple question. It's binary question. And some people start with the day before we met and then out. That's basic conversation skill. The second one is the thinking alone ability. So if I give a task, then the person should be able to think about it and make some options from himself or herself. And then the next time we meet, we should be able to discuss about it. Usually in education, some people do what they told to do. And then those education make the person not be able to think alone. So those 2 things, communication and think alone.
Maybe just to finish off then, I would back up the attribute of curiosity. For me, curiosity is perhaps the number 1 attribute that I think is the most useful for students coming into the program, and also the way they leave. And for 2 reasons. One is, it's just a generally useful skill when you're exploring project topics. You need to have a curiosity about a whole wide range of issues that people in the world faces. So being naturally curious and broad-minded that's handy when you're doing projects. But maybe more importantly, in the world where things are changing so fast and complexity is a feature of our lives, and we're not quite sure where things are going to change and how the world and the way we work is going to be different. Curiosity from that perspective is a kind of open-mindedness and adaptability, to not react negatively when things change, but look at them and think, how can we bend this to a benefit? How can I learn more about this so it becomes a positive move, a positive direction in my life, rather than simply a knee-jerk negative reaction. So I think number 1, aside from like technical skills and other things, fundamentally curious people is the best attribute. And I also love that because the fact that they knock on closed doors and explore hidden highways and pathways. So they're not necessarily the perfectly stable people, but I love that I love that attribute.
Can I carry on, just a little bit? One thing, I is a revelation, listening to the few speakers, okay? The ability to strike the conversation, to carry on the conversation is very important, even with AI, okay? And, so if you're able to write intelligent prompts, you will be amazed, by the outcome. And all the pictures that, Ricky and myself show, we need to break the silos, punch holes to get the teams to work together. And something, even I challenge design team, we need, to really be inquisitive ourselves and able, when we collaborate and we run workshops, with colleagues, we must be able, to have that ability to ask questions, carry forward, why not, and be inquisitive and go deep until, we get deeper insights. So that is not just the creative act. I think is a much more serious discipline, on one's worth, to whether that's designers or marketers or people doing data analysis. You need to have the discipline, you need to have the core skills, and then overarching skills, to connect.
Right, so let me summarize. This morning we spoke about the T model of having a wide vision and a deep understanding of something. But it sounds to me more and more like what you're saying is curiosity is good, exploration is good, but there still needs to be some level of technical foundation there in order for this to work. It is not a one or the other scenario. If I look at across, even though, Miles, you are talking about setting up a department, but equally so in the other profiles that was presented, that level of expertise needs to be established beforehand. So that makes an argument that in fact we need very specific disciplines and we need to understand rigor, but where the real exploration comes in, where the beyond interdisciplinarity comes in, is where actually when it goes into a professional setting and then you start challenging and basically rubbing out those borders and edges. Does that make sense? So here's my question. As directors or visionaries or people who have to lead it, how do you match up or mix these groups? What do you look for in matching groups and mixing them up and say, you've got to work together, try, go and do that? Does it work like that, or do you think there's an organic structure?
Well, let me start. In our industry, actually, that's why when I answered the question for the last question, I put technical excellence as the number one first. The reason for that is the young graduates come into the company, they normally want to go for chartership. So that means they need to develop their own deep domain expertise first, so that they can actually work with others. Without having your own domain expertise is difficult. And that's why our focus for the young graduates coming to the company, in fact, is getting deep dive into your own disciplines first, get the chartership. And then after that, we're talking about not just T-shape, is key shape, as I mentioned, not just single horizontal and then vertical. It's actually different, depth of your knowledge that you need to get after you gain your chartership. So maybe later on, then you need to cross-disciplinary working after getting your chartership. That's the point where we bring in our design school program. We normally invite the young graduates after they kind of getting chartership to come, because at that time they already developed very good deep dive knowledge, and then at that moment of their career path they need to go that way, and then slowly add on more different knowledge together so that they become leaders in the future. And that's why technical excellence is very important, but one by one we can't give them every priorities, every trainings that they need to go through. And so we are prioritizing all these different kind of trainings according to the stage in the company.
The structure can be organic, but before you have that, I think it's a process. So I guess you need to nurture, that environment, to grow and prosper within the organizations. And we have a mix of top-down, we have a mix of maybe through the projects. We do a lot of baby steps, or we call it initiatives or projects. For example, how we increase the market share, of rechargeable batteries. Okay, and we run initiatives. So we put, the marketing team, the sales team, the design team, all the key actors together, and it's kind of like managing, I would say, managed chaos, to some extent, and the colleagues may not get comfortable to start, but once you get this coaching, this environment going, and step it up, then I'm sure that the colleagues will start getting used to this kind of dynamics, because it has to be time conscious, it has to be resource conscious, but creatively charged. Now that's not easy mix, to get together. Yeah.
Pressure does not necessarily bring forward creativity. It just causes a lot of anxiety. Anyone else want to respond to that?
Curiosity, building curiosity in all ages is important. In my case, when I was young, I wanted to become a musician and figured out I was not enough and gave it up. Later, around 30 years old, I learned music writing again. And from there, I understood computer generation AI kind of thing. And there was, later I realized that there was the beginning theory of machine learning. And from there, I understood AI later. So I'm grateful that I was curious about music at the time and gave it up. And I tried to, major electric engineering or physics. Then I met some great professor whose name P.K. Lee, I.K.P. Lee, and I fell in love with design and started studying design. And then all those curiosity made my, spaghetti career path. From my design to software engineering to data science, robot, and customer experience. So I think those forward thinking with curiosity and exploration in all age, that's important.
I mean, for actuarial sciences, a spaghetti pathway may be an ultimate nightmare, but it seems for designers we embrace it quite easily. Something I can ask all four of you, also reflecting back on this morning, we spoke about mindsets, we spoke about attitudes and being open to certain other possibilities. And I really would like to hear from each of you, what do you do when things don't work? What do you do with the things that fail? If you call them that even, but what really do you do with that?
That's a great question, because one of my most favourite phrases is the fantastic failure. I think what you do with failure is you celebrate it. Because I actually think, so you hear so often, innovation, 95% of ideas fail, or 90 or 80%. But I fundamentally think it isn't a failure. Exploring new ideas is a bit like exploring a new territory. And in order to find the right way around, you need to explore many directions. So every direction you go down has its success point. This way doesn't work. That way is dangerous. This way is expensive. It's like everything you do teaches you something. So it can't be a failure. It has added to your ability to understand the right direction. It helps you find the right direction forward. So I think, fundamentally how we get people, this comes down to how we get people to value design and innovation fundamentally, is not to see this black and white situation between success and failure. It's part of the process, and we need to choose a better terminology, to help us, navigate that direction. And everybody talks about this. It's failure is, fail faster to learn quickly, and all of these sorts of phrases are fundamental to design. But I think, we need to elevate it to a celebratory level. Like, you failed, that fantastic. It means you learnt something really important that someone who succeeded didn't, particularly in education. If you have students who are constantly getting the answer right, either they're geniuses or they're lucky. But if they're not failing every now and then how do you know they're not just lucky?
Failure, to some extent, are learning opportunities. As long as we don't go too harsh on it. I think open mind is very important. Sometimes it's not necessarily the boss, will criticize on certain things, but many times our observations is colleagues tend not to be very defensive. Okay, they are defending on their own act because they have invested time, they have spent resources, and they are protecting, the outcomes, and that's why we need to relax and open mind and really learn, how we can do better.
Right. I run a design school called Brilliant Failure. The reason for that is actually we want to separate into two types of failure. One failure is actually we are doing something wrong, office mistakes, then that's very bad. But then some kind of failures, in fact, are due to unforeseeable circumstances. So that kind of failures, we want to investigate further. And then we put a lot of cases into what we call it lessons learned database that help our colleagues knowing better about those related projects that failed, what's the reason behind, such that they can learn. We have a lot of skills network. They have the lessons learned database that help them, especially the young colleagues, knowing what's happened in the past. And then hopefully they understand further in the future, they won't commit that kind of things anymore. And that's very important about lessons learned, I would say.
So in my case, I think I keep prototyping myself, made myself prototype or something. And what I do usually is to try first and fail fast. That kind of worked for me. So if, it's success or fail, that's binary. And if I fail or succeed, either ways, I need to do the thing first, and then if it doesn't work, then just fail, let go.
So I was just reminded of something after your last two comments, which is failing. I think is an important part of a personal learning experience. I suppose coming from education rather than being from from a corporate background where you're trying to ultimately succeed. We're trying to educate. The fact that people fail is a very important part of learning. And I'm also reminded by the phrase, I can't remember who said it, I think it was a British engineer who used to run a now failed motorcycle company, but he said something like, bring me the person that doesn't understand it can't be done. So bring me someone who doesn't know all the reasons why it can't be done, who hasn't seen failure or understand failure, because sometimes the breakthrough is finding an unexpected direction by allowing that kind of freedom to fail. And I think that's something that, particularly in education, we need to ensure students have that ability and time and confidence to do.
But I think there's one additional step here. One, I'm going to sign you all up for a lecture series that we call Design Failures. So, sorry, but you're going to be on the list. Two, I actually think that people who are training to be designers also need to hear these stories, also need to hear it from within industry and from within practice. Because more often than not, the assumption and what assumption is and what is presented is this is what has really worked. What students also need to understand is take the challenges, be daring, explore any or more things beyond your own skill. Now, usually, I mean, I'm talking about design studios, when you see the work like that, it's a question of have you really looked at what others have done and how you map out your path or route or approach to design. But hearing this, I think, because you working in industry, it has a financial implication. Industry is a very tough ball game to play. So hearing that, it would probably encourage people to come out and say, well, look, I tried it and it didn't work. It's tough also to convince educators to say, you know, we need to recognize that, but it is part of the challenge ahead. Before I go on, I want to know from the audience, does anyone have questions? To Anne and Jen. Do you have another mic? Do you have another mic? Use this one.
Thank you for your sharing. I think my question, I mean, it's all great, but I feel like in reality and in practice, like there's always time limit or like, you know, limitations, lack of resource or whatnot, where the failure is not accepted or not acceptable. And I'm just curious, I think it kind of goes back to the question that Gerhard asked for the morning session, like how do we then actually convince that this can be possible, this kind of environment or this kind of infrastructure is created where failure actually can be accepted and is encouraged so that, you know, new ways of going about things can, you know, be actually practiced. Yeah.
Well, that's why people in culture and leadership come in play. You know, I think as long as you set certain parameters and you encourage, this is the thing that, you know, collaborative creativity means that, you know, you work as a team. Design could be a team sport too. Okay, so once everybody, you know, recognize that and everybody add value to it, you know, we can deep dive and understand why it doesn't work. Okay, and in business context, most of the time, if you remember the double diamond, okay, most of the time is we react too fast and then we start to design things too fast, okay? So we need, you know, to, rather than immediately saying or defining something as a failure, I think I rather would like, you know, the team, you know, to maybe always work on or invest a little bit more time on understanding or maybe the first diamond, you know, doing a bit more research, deep diving, looking at trends, looking at broader perspective, framing the questions or reframing, you know, the questions, and before you start acting. And then with AI, with prototyping tools, you can try a lot of things, you know, fast and reiterative things, but don't go too deep, too fast, you know, into designing the solutions just by reacting. So, yeah.
Anyone else?
Sometimes my first startup bankrupted after 4 years. I found it, and at the time, nobody that I met believed that AI is coming in 3 years, and it was realized in 1.5 years after I quit. So sometimes it is not possible by situation or by my ability or other factors. So those ones, we cannot do anything. But still, there should be a couple of things, a couple of superpowers for each person. For me, it was implementation. So when somebody say, this is not possible, then I try to make it work and then show see, it works. Then you're convinced. So that kind of thing, for each people, they have their special abilities, convincing abilities, I believe. We need to develop that.
I was just going to add in maybe a slightly tangential point that, especially in design, there's kind of very different motivations and goals for different design teams. You have design teams, as we mentioned earlier in the day, that are essentially about the iteration, the improvement of existing work, and that's a really important part of design. And then there's and they don't split into this black and white categorization, but design teams that are like more into the innovation, disruption, the kind of novelty, the big creative change. And I think how you handle those teams and how they handle so-called success or failure is very different. The iterative team, need to focus on small steps for, incremental improvement. Bigger team the other team needs to take bigger risks, and by such an approach, that is going to lead to non-successful routes as well. So I just think often in design, we put one heading on a whole world of very, very different approaches and goals and objectives, and we should bear that in mind.
So what you're saying, don't be too universal in this.
Yeah, I suppose I'm conscious of the education I work in tends to be at the novel side of things. We're not interested in iteration, period. We're interested in breakthrough thinking and big step change. That's why it's for us someone who made a huge effort to push far out into a new space and was non-successful is a major celebration. They've opened up a new way of thinking, and that's very, very different if you're creating a product like this water bottle in front of us, and next year you have to tweak it slightly so it keeps up with modern trends and stands out on the shelf. Completely different way of working.
Very different value set. Right. Anne?
Yeah, I just wanted to come back to what we mean by, not what we mean by failure. It's about dissonance, really. And it's about dissonance between the academic community and the business community, which is why it's interesting in, I think, this context. If you work in a university, volume, particularly here in Hong Kong, not necessarily in PolyU, you're measured by the volume of papers you produce, not by the quality of them. And what they want to see is basically the academic community writes about good news. It doesn't write about failure. Thousands, millions, I would say, even billions, is spent on academic papers, and what doesn't work doesn't get published. That's a lot of money. I'm really interested from your point of view how you deal with that dissonance. And I'll give you one more example of dissonance because we're talking about AI. Every time you ask AI a question, the power bank you drain is enormous. Now, we're talking on one hand about saving the world in terms of environmental stuff. On the other hand, we're extolling the values of AI. And every time you ask it a damn question, you're damaging the planet unless we come up with something that is a little bit more systems and a little bit more circular. And I'm really interested in the industry or business situation, how we deal with those kind of dissonance moments from your point of view. Because they're problems, they exist in both worlds. But actually those two worlds have to come together at some point. For us to join those dots. And I'm just interested how you join those dots.
Well, maybe I take on first. We have a framework. We have an internal research fund trying to mitigate whether, or embrace the risk while at the same time encourage taking on challenges. And what I actually put into the research strategy is really to separate the ideas into now, new, and next. Now, which means close to kind of reality. The successful is higher. But new is something that can be deployed probably in 2 or 3 years' time. A lot of uncertainty there. The last one is about blue skies ideas. So I have at the moment 70, 20, and 10. That's hopefully try to encourage more projects that have a higher chance of success, but at the same time, allow some room for those blue skies idea that might be able to pass through. So that kind of framework we have put in, and hopefully that can help us to kind of, take on some risk in the future.
And allow me, to use an analogy. I'm a musician, organist as well, and we embrace dissonance. Okay, as long as it is in context, with the whole thing. Okay, you don't just go dissonance, on something. Of course, that become noise. Okay, but once you find, the continuity, that your dissonance is part of a broader context of something. Now, then I would have guessed that the challenge will be on how you create that context. Okay, so if you see that problems, as causing you dissonance, then maybe you have to turn that into some kind of possibility. How that becomes part of something, so that the story can carry on, and still allow your mission to carry on, and still allow my mission, to carry on. Okay, and so I guess we all have dissonance in different parts of acts. Is how we actually frame the situation and react, to the situation. Yeah.
Right. I mean, linking to that, we have a question from a viewer online who says, everyone may have experienced failures in studies, job, or life. The cost and impact of failures vary widely. If we want to encourage it, then we need to quantify it. How can we try to quantify it? It's a tough one, right?
Yeah, almost impossible, I think, unless it's a really big project. But I think the point about failing fast is that it's low cost failure, right? Having a great idea and whatever it is, if it's an app, a system, or a product, finding some way of testing your hypothesis out with real people quickly. The faster you do it, the faster you fail, the more success you have early on, and the cheaper it is. So, yeah, in terms of quantifying it financially, which is also a useful thing, it allows you to do more things. It's I don't know how you can obviously quantify things in terms of money, in terms of time spent, in terms of effort, but the real success is doing it quickly. Don't waste so much time, effort, money.
Anyone else?
So I don't usually quantify that kind of thing, because so when I went to Microsoft, there was another offer from a smaller company. If I compare those two offers, Microsoft was much better, but later I figured the stock option got rocket high for the other one, and then kind of, mixed feeling. If I quantify that kind of thing, or for the bankrupted startup, if I didn't found it and kept the job at Microsoft for 5 more years, then I might be retired. I don't know. So those things, if I think about that and the other one and the other one, then it goes on and on and on. It never ends. So I just don't think about it. I don't just quantify failure.
I had to jump in because I just had a great idea, which I think, from an education perspective, I think we should quantify failure by making a grading rubrics, and then we can award scores. This is a 5-star failure because you did this, this, and this. Fantastic. This one is only a 1-star failure, though. Yeah. Okay.
I don't know if my dean will be happy. Anyone else?
Well, I agree that it's not easy to quantify. Agree also that In fact, we try to minimize the effort being put in it. Wearing my hat as a ventures leader, I always keep on, investing into startups. I always say no as quickly as possible to those startups that actually not in line with our development. So saying no quickly actually saving a lot of resources for us to invest into the startup. So I think what I call is lean venturing is something that we are pushing forward, trying to minimize our resources to avoid, having a big loss ultimately.
I won't necessarily say quantify the failure because the overall assessment is always more than quantitative. Okay, there's a lot of human factors, a lot of soft aspects, and I guess don't dismiss our efforts so easily. That's what I mean. As long as whatever we do, we kind of justify our time and resources and efforts, and we do best into putting our minds into something. If it doesn't go in the direction, then we just go back and revisit. Don't dismiss things too fast, is what I would say.
Yeah, lessons needed. Quantifying lessons and, thinking about lessons, that's great.
Don't overdo, is what I mean.
It's a provoking question, but it also highlights systemic failure in terms of thinking about things and what success is and what is not measured as success. Because actually, for me, it shouldn't be a quantification, but a question of values. And I think that is really, where we're heading towards. If we quantify everything, then I already think we probably have lost the game, so to say, if we start from that point. But anyway, any last questions from the floor?
Hello. As Dr. Yim has mentioned in his PowerPoint, AI is leading the structural changes in the society or in a company. And my question is, how could AI lead to a change in the way we see or frame questions? Is it AI the dominant factor to the changes in our way of thinking? If no, what else could be? Thank you.
So the question is whether the AI is the dominant factor of our thinking or different thinking process, right? Yes, and more as time goes by. Because AI, now we talk to AI a lot, and then it kind of answers or respond to our action. Later, AI will initiate the communication more and stimulate us. And also, I mentioned in my presentation, there will be chance that AI will be in some area or some field, it will exceed our intelligence. For example, AlphaGo, the game AI. After AlphaGo, the human Go players skilled up. So after AlphaGo, post-AlphaGo players, human players, can definitely beat the pre-AlphaGo players. So, yeah, I think my answer is yes.
Right. With that, I would like to thank you all for your participation and also your sharing. It certainly is something I'm really going to invite you all back for the lecture series. Thank you very much. Also, thank you to the audience. And now I would like to ask our Dean, Professor K.P. Lee, to give closing remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.